morning, friends of mine, friends of the channel. How are you doing here this morning? It's the first of the month, March 1st, ready to march right into that weekend. It's an exciting day because we get to play some Friday night Magic the Gathering cards. It's not too hard to join me here on the morning show. If you folks are tuning in from anywhere around the world, let's get ready to go. It's going to be a good one here this morning for all of you folks out there who will like to open up packs and shuffle up stacks of Magic the Gathering cards. Thanks for joining me here this morning. It's a later edition of the Friday morning show. Why is that? Well, timing is everything. And we want to make sure that we bring you folks the weekly winners here today from Arjun, coming in from the stock desk from all the way around the world, the Netherlands. And that article doesn't come out until around 8 a.m. our time. So, in order to be on time and on target, we had to just take a little bit extra time here this morning to give you folks a minute to rise and shine. I hope you didn't miss me. I missed you, and I wouldn't miss it for the world. It's good to be here on the morning show with you folks. I got an interesting couple of articles to bring to you folks from the stock desk. It's going to be a fun one. And don't forget, if you can't bring a friend to Magic Cards, bring a friend to Brody's. It should be an interesting stream. We're testing out some new audio levels here this morning to make sure that everything is coming in just right. Thanks to Gaming Bob for all his input on the stream here. Over the last week, the technicalities of streaming is quite in depth. It's Friday. Diarrhea Awareness Week begins on Monday and it runs till Friday. That's right. Terrible jokes here this morning. People don't like jokes about Friday because they're weak and they sneak into the channel stream here this morning. If you know what I mean, well, what do we got to do to get started? You know, it's what we like to do. We're going to take a look at some AI generated Magic cards. Let's get over to Robo Rosewater to take a look at some of the cards that the AI is bringing us here today. Now, I missed you. Was about to call in a missing persons report. Put my face on the milk carton. Check your refrigerator. Make sure that Brody is not MIA. I appreciate your communication over on X, Mr. Benson. Nice to see you here this morning. I have got to just get the stream loaded up here, and let's get this pushed out on the X marks the spot. That's right. Get this pushed out on the, let's get it out there. I'm gonna do a quick share to anybody who wants to join us here on the morning show, tuning in from around the world on X. It should be a good one. Now, do you like tracking the prices of Magic cards? Do you like looking at AI-generated Magic cards? How's the volume coming in this morning? For those of you who have been here once before, here's how it works. If the card is playable any way whatsoever, we're going to pass it. You'll hear this sound. The ring-ding-a-ding this morning. And if the card's got any gibberish on it whatsoever, if it's non-functional junk text, if it's a bunch of jibber-jabber, we'll fail it. You'll hear this sound. That's the sound of the buzzing, cousin. So let's head on over to Robo Rosewater and see what we can see. This card here. As a Boros card. What do we got here this morning? We got the Boros card. Let's make sure the levels are coming in. We don't want to be peeking on the microphone here this morning. Let's check it out. We've got the Tormathi Strands, the Fosangs. Oh, it's always a mouthful when you come to see some of these AI-generated Magic cards. Flying Trample 3/3 for 2 mana. Not too pretty bad. Not a bad mana cost. All right, we get a 3/3 for 2 manas. That's a good start. I just commented on that on X. LOL. Nice, nice, nice. So we're trying to push out and reach a few more viewers here. So the time change of the morning show on Friday might just be a little bit of a way to catch a few more of you folks who love Magic cards as much as we do. What do you think of this card here? The AI bringing us something interesting to look at. So Tormathy strands the Phosangs. I know it's hard to say, but it's easy to play. It's a Zartelli Embrace. So give yourself a hug here this morning. Flying Trample 3/3. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 red and 1 and 3 life. That's addition on top of everything else. We're gonna have to pay more. It's got a downside. Okay, 3/3s for 2 mana with Flying and Trample have to have a downside. And then we got tap and sacrifice a permanent. Search your library for a creature card. Reveal it. Put it into your hand, then shuffle. Seems like it works okay. What do you think? Mr. DJ Longhair coming in live and direct here this morning from California. I was missing you this morning. Glad to see you show popped up now, right? Well, we've got to pass this one. This one seems fine, doesn't it, Coach? It seems like it's got a downside on it, but nevertheless, it's a playable Magic card. It's got a drawback of costing you a red and 1 and 3 life to play an instant sorcery. That's the payoff for having a 3/3 for 2 mana. Fair, underpowered, OP, non-functional. Let's go fair. See what folks say. OP. How is that OP? Sack a permanent, get a creature to your hand. I don't think it is, but now this one here, inner confusion. A little bit of inner confusion here this morning. Confucius say, man with hole in pocket feel cocky all day. Inner confusion. Destroy all artifacts. We've got the Saga for 2 mana, a black and 1. Destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. So you get a board wipe, pretty much. It destroys itself. Yes, it's self-imploding. This is terrible. Okay. How's that work? It's gonna nerf itself? It should have like hexproof or something. It destroys itself, it doesn't even get to the second trick. What's the second trick? Create a 5/4 white and black vampire creature token with flying, and then the third proc is draw a card for each untapped permanent you control. Killing itself here. Let's get it out of here. I'd say it's non-functional due to the fact that it doesn't. Good for 2, though. It's good for the 2. All right, this one here, I'm going to say non-functional because, yeah, OP. A lot of people missing the interaction there that Mr. DJ commented. So this one definitely gives us a head scratcher here this morning. What about this one here? Down in Candor. Down in Candor. You feeling down for some Candor? 2 mana, 2 black. 2 black for this one. It's a legendary creature, human rogue. At the beginning of each end step, if there are 3 or more creature cards in your graveyard, creatures target player controls phase out. That seems okay. Phasing's better. Better and back here. Better and back in black. The 2 mana Candor is a 2/2. The beginning of each end step, if there are 3 or more creature cards in your graveyard, creature's target opponent controls phase out. Seems fine. Could you imagine giving all your opponent stuff phasing? It's OP and silly, but usable. Let's use it. I like the art on it. It looks like maybe a Jace or a Mind Sculpture cruising down the strip. Traffic's moving really fast. In the background of this one, we got some light, camera, action, fair, OP. Let's give it a fair. Let's see what we dare to pass it fair. OP. Oh, it's OP. Never mind, Brody. You should have listened to the DJ on this one. Should have, could have, would have. Too late to change my vote. How do you make a blonde laugh on a Friday night? You tell him a joke on Monday. And what's Friday? Why is Friday a happy day? Because the next day is Saturday. Sadly, the guy who invented fruit smoothies has passed away. He's going to be buried on Friday. Check out the Phyrexian Shield Bearers, though. This 2 black and 2/2/3 human wizard with Defender. Phyrexian Shield Bearers enter the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature in your graveyard. That seems fine. I like it. 4 mana for 2/3 that gets counters if it comes back. And you tap it to untap target artifact or creature. Wow, we need this in our Time Vault deck. Is there anything you're looking to untap here today? This could get it done for you. Defender, Human Wizard, 2/3, 4 mana. Seems kind of balanced. Not too bad. There's worse cards out there from the AI. This one, I think, will pass it. All right, should we give it a fair? Fair, mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest of them all? 26% say OP, but 67% of the viewers say this thing is just fine. Fine and fine. Time Capsule, nice to see you here this morning. We're running a little bit of a later show here this Friday, so we can bring you folks the weekly winners. And then we've got this one, Leon and Spawn of Krosa. This one we talked about yesterday. It's a recap. 1 white and 4 for the 5/5 legendary Astartes Ranger. Astartes. How you doing? Whenever a player attacks, you face down. Face down, face the window. Give me some lines. Bart, I'm going to make you write on the chalkboard. You cast this card. Player attacks you, face down. Devour 2. I think the Devour is a legitimate mechanic. It is. I don't remember if we passed this yesterday. Let's go. Let's fail it. Get the buzzing rolling here this morning. And then we're back to where we started yesterday. The Violenter Wild one. Very wild here on the stream. Wild and crazy. This egg. It's got lifelink and modified creatures you control have protection from Nate. So Nate is the kind of protection we want. It's a Humpty Dumpty. It really is. All right. Humping and dumping along in the stream here this morning. Good morning, folks. Fine friends of the channel. Those of you who like to crack open packs and shuffle up stacks of Magic the Gathering cards. It's not too hard to join me here on the morning show weekdays when we discuss the prices of Magic cards. Do you like tracking the prices of Magic cards? Is there enough information out there, or is there just too much gall darn information? Let me do it for you here on your Magic the Gathering finance adventure. Bring you folks a little bit to talk about and stock about for you folks. These are good times, my friend. Good times to be alive. There's good pickups and cheap cards on the reserve list, stuff that we might want to get into our collection. So let's take a look at the latest news article from February 29th. This is coming by way of Arjun over at the stock desk. And I'd like to thank the folks over at MTG Stocks for bringing us this special edition of the morning show. It's brought to you in part by MTG Stocks Premium. Experimenting with the premium account here for the rest of the year. You can go it yourself if you want to get yourself a premium membership. Please feel free to do so, or you could join me here on the morning show where we test the functionality of this fantastic site that I love so much. So feel free to check it out. These are some of the interesting features that you folks can explore on your Magic the Gathering finance journey. I laughed so hard at that horse AI card, I woke up a little Benson. All right, back to sleep. Back to sleep. Here we go. All right, these are your weekly winners from the stock desk here this morning. The stock desk, the best desk, and it's nice for you folks to join in the fun. We have Pioneer and we have Commander, and come look at what the top decks in the Pro Tour have done to the prices. This is interesting. Things are moving like every week just in time for Friday Night Magic. I'll tell you about the Magic the Gathering cards that'll be the talk of the town tonight. Come discuss this week's price movements with us over on the Discord channel featured by MTG Stocks. You might catch me over there, and we've got a recap of some of the articles that were brought to you folks all week. We've got some interesting movers because of the shakeup in the formats and people winning tournaments. If you want to receive any notifications, you can turn those on too over at the Discord, and every time there's news, you'll get a punch to your gut by way of email. All right, the Vein Ripper. This is a card that made headlines over the last week because it took down the Murders of Karloff Manor qualifier. It's the 6/5 vampire for 6 mana. It's got flying and ward, sacrifice a creature, and whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So it's got this drain ability on it. What do we call it? Like the Zilliport Cutthroat effect or the Blood Artist effect. This is like Blood Artist's bigger brother. Now, Murray Cooper mentioned there is a bit of a downside to this card because it's got the sacrifice ability for the ward cost that could give your opponents a free sack outlet. So if you're considering playing this card, just watch out what your opponents are playing on the other side of the battlefield because this comes with a built-in sack outlet for your opponents. And it's only been 2 weeks since we discussed the undervalued cards from Karloff Manor, and Cryptic Coach shot back up after seeing a play in a bunch of standard decks. This week, we've got a flying 6/5 vampire assassin that seems to have been undervalued since the release of the set, and not only is it a big beater, but it can also drain an opponent for 2 whenever a creature dies. It is a rather unique and expensive ward cost of sacrificing a creature, and before the spike of this card, would have set you back about $8. I mean, it wasn't by all means a cheap card in the first place to get your hands on, but it definitely wasn't the most expensive card from the set. Well, now it is, leaving Delney Streetwise Lookout behind in second place. So the Lookout, this one was looking out for the most expensive cards in the game. Now we've got the Vein Ripper, something that would have been worth picking up before this interaction was discussed. I like it when tournaments come out and people find new ways to break magic cards. I'm not myself. I'm going to be playing Pioneer with Dustin Cullahall in a trios event coming up in a couple of weeks. And this might have been a viable option before the spike, but I'm not willing to chase the hotness because it's just going to be about $100 or more for a playset of the Vein Ripper and as well as Sorin, the Imperialist Bloodlord, a couple of cards that have been moving up because of the wins taken down by, I think it was Seth Manfield, who piloted this combination of vampire synergies all the way to first place. And the reason for the spike in Pioneer, because it's being played with Rakdos decks where it obviously functions as a finisher. For 6 mana, it means that it'll come in near the end of the game, which is most likely very late. But fortunately, we can also play the Bloodlord, which we can use to cheat it into play on turn 3. Besides these two, we find all kinds of good cards in the deck, like Creature of the Schism. 2/4 Vampire Cleric for 1 black and 2 with Death Touch, and Creature of the Schism attacks the player with the most life or tied for the most life. You get a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink, and whatever Creature of Schism attacks while you have the most life or are tied for the most life, you draw a card and lose 1 life. So the Preacher, quite a good card, which we discussed earlier this year. And also, we will also find cards like the Fable of the Mirror Breaker and recently unbanned Smuggler's Copy in the deck list for this Vampire Pioneer deck. And this new archetype broke into Pioneer during the Pro Tour Karloff Manor, which was ultimately won by Seth Manfield in a Rakdos Vampires deck. Speaking of spikes in this deck, Sorin himself has been going up quickly because of the deck's success as well. So if you got these cards in your collection, it might be time to dig them out and give them a dust them off and give them a shot. If you're interested in playing Pioneer, you might just have the pieces, the game pieces, as they say, to make this Pioneer deck viable. Last night's channel short on my channel was about the vampires, by the way, and this is your favorite Planeswalker, Mr. Hillbilly. Nice to see you here this morning. A favorite? The Sorin, the Imperialist Bloodlord, spiking up to, what are we at here? $40? Choom, choom, $40. This guy making a spike. And I want to thank Cardboard Splendor for a fantastic short. If you haven't been over to Splendor's website, he's working in the background doing some programming stuff. His editing skills are quite top shelf, if you ask me. And we're going to have to connect over on the Discord just to train Brody a little bit on this fancy spreadsheet that he's been developing to track the prices of Magic cards and help us along our Magic the Gathering finance journey. Let's take a look at what else is moving and is the talk of the town today. Damning verdict. This card's up 65%, and we all love our sweepers, don't we? The verdict costs you 5 mana. It's 2 white and 3 for the sorcery. It says destroy all creatures with counters on them. Get them out of here. You got counters on creatures, this thing's going to destroy them. It might be good to protect your own stuff if you're not playing counters, but if you can put counters on your opponent's stuff, this sweeper is for you. I've seen some heated discussion online from people who passionately hate on cards like Sunfall and Farewell. The white color pie has had a long history of sweepers, especially with Wrath of God, probably is one of the most famous, but where Wrath of God is the most symmetrical and straightforward one, just destroy them all. There have been numerous sweepers in addendum. The aforementioned Sunfall is 1 mana more expensive than Wrath of God, but it exiles creatures and gets you an incubation token. Farewell is another mana extra and just answers just about everything. 6 mana, and this one's modal. You get to choose what it's going to sweep. While I could go on and on with multiple more sweepers, Damning Verdict's a little bit different since it makes distinctions between the creatures to destroy. For that, 1 mana extra compared to Wrath of God in the right deck, an effect that can be made asymmetrical. People did not discover that. The sorcery already sees play in decks around Perry the Pulverizer and Right Hand the Last of the Abzan. Any commander deck that cares about counters on it may want to play Damning Verdict, and that's the reason why we see this card up a little bit today. What do we got? Joya? I can't pronounce this one. Voja or Boya? Jaws of the Conclave, and Sophia, the dog detective. Morning super fast. Nice to see you. Board wipes does what you want. I wish Farewell was bad. All right, so the Wolf support card. Nice to see you, Derek, the super fast one coming into the stream. And it's nice to catch you here a little later on a Friday edition so we can bring you the most talked about cards in Magic the Gathering for this week. These are their weekly winners. And in Karloff Manor, we see a new commander being printed that we also discussed a couple of weeks ago. But again, it seems like it's going to be popular in Commander to build around. People are looking to create decks around Voyager, the Jaws of the Conclave. It's been one of the more popular commanders from the Karloff Manor set. And since Voyager cares about counters, you can see why it would be likely to have the sweeper. But not only that, we have Sophia, the dog detective, that might have led to the spike of this card to a lesser extent. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch up with you later on the replay. Thank you for your shout out. Hope to speak to you on Discord. Let's schedule. Yes, we'll try and line up the schedules. No big panic, right? Patience. Good things come to those who wait. Let's just take it one step at a time. Gonti's Aetherheart, another reason to dust off your bulk from Kaladesh. If you're still holding on to any Kaladesh cards, I was really, really into the Kaladesh set. Those were good times. Days of cheap booster boxes. Draft was very affordable. I think you could get it into a draft for about $20 because the pack price of Magic the Gathering cards around that era was quite low, and it's not what we see today with the plus $200 booster boxes coming out. Time to dust off some of your old Kaladesh singles, especially this one has been up 100% and it could go higher with the return of the energy mechanic making its way into the game of Magic the Gathering. Once again, Gonti's Aetherheart is a card that's been the talk of the town this week, moving up the street and giving you some neat extra turn effects. Who doesn't like taking extra turns? I know. Who has 2 thumbs and likes extra turns? This guy. I like to take extra turns. Turning and burning along in the stream. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Those were the days. All right. What's a good pasta to make on Friday the 13th? Fettuccine Alfredo. And, all right, let's take a look at this Gonti's Aetherheart. For those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. This quote, although a bit paraphrased, is attributed to a writer and philosopher George Santayana. So, why am I quoting philosophers? Because this seems like a repetition from not too long ago. Last October, we discussed the spike in Aetherworks Marvel, another Kaladesh block card, and just 1 week later, we talked about Gonti's Aetherheart. Just like last week when we talked about Aetherworks Marvel spiking, and now 1 week later, we're again discussing the Aether Heart and how it's moving up. And dear to our hearts, Gonti's Aether Heart is moving up in price. But I hear you thinking that it stands to reason that these two cards often spike close to each other or simultaneously. They fit in the same theme, but it's this particular case that they are both spiking once again for the exact same reason as back in October. The reason is once again the Universes Beyond Fallout set that came out, where the science precon deck revolves around energy tokens. So energy making a reappearance in Magic the Gathering, causing these extremely powerful couple of Kaladesh cards to move up in price. And the commander decks like Dr. Madison Lee, and another card in the deck is Rex the Cyberhound. Both of these cards were previewed back in October, making the two artifacts spike in price. And now that we have a known knowledge of full deck lists, we can also know that the cards like the T45 Power Armor and Liberty Prime Recharge are in the set as well. Nevertheless, the reason for the spike hasn't changed. I'm frankly a bit surprised that these two cards are once again spiked because of it, but I wouldn't have expected the prices of them to dwindle so much in between. That being said, I really love the Fallout set so far. I'm pretty sure one of the reasons I didn't have higher grades in high school is because of how much I played Fallout 1. Besides my constant procrastinating and unwillingness to put in more effort. Nice to see the historian here, Big Mike Hatcher. Say hi to Big Daddy Hatcher, one of the kings of Quan here in the game of Magic: The Gathering. We're discussing the prices of Magic cards and what are the talk of the town this week, and cards moving up. These are your weekly winners for all of those tuning in. We've got a couple of cheap pickups. The revisit of Kaladesh and Kaladesh cards synergizing with the Fallout set. And we've got a couple of cheap pickups for you folks that have been identified as a penny stocks premium at a discount. You folks can probably pick these up fairly cheap. The Stalactite Stalker talking and stalking this morning. Nice to have you with us. For all you folks, you can get this Stalactite Stalker, which has been identified as a premium penny stock feature. And if you want to know what that is, well, you've got to get yourself a premium membership. So, what is a premium membership? It's something that you folks can enjoy courtesy of MTG stocks. And got a link for you folks. If you're interested in picking up a premium membership, this stream is sponsored in part by MTG stocks. But if you want to test the functionality, you're going to get a look at the penny stocks, all the inside features of the premium account. You can join me here weekdays where I will show you the interfunctionality of all the premium functions. You can get a sneak peek, and we're going to feature that here for you folks all year for free. You can tune in. We're also building a list of cards that we're watching because we like tracking the prices of these Magic cards, and this software and this website are going to help us do it together, helping us on our Magic the Gathering finance journey. So if you want to get a discount, your deal on the premium stocks, you can pick up yourself a copy and you can peek at these functions and these penny stocks that have been identified here in this article. Stalactite Stalker being one of them, and Rishadan Port is also another penny stock that's been identified here by MTG stocks. And you can get access to all the premium penny stocks with me if you tune in the mornings. Rishadan Port, this is a card that was good in Legacy. It was played so much in the Taxes build. I remember White was playing it with Wasteland and cards that attack your opponent's mana base. And the Rishadan Port was a land that you could pay one and tap it to tap one of your opponent's lands. Very critical in Legacy formats. When this card was played, it was played in white decks primarily, and it was used during your opponent's upkeep to tap down their colored sources and put them one land back and control the board state. This card was quite expensive. I ain't afraid of your wrenches. Well, let's hook them up. All right, let's hook them up. Somebody wrench that man. Hey. All right, I'm trying to give you a wrench here, Mr. Mike. First time out here. So this Rashad port is a cheap pickup. The Mercadian Mass version is the premium version, especially in foil. It's worth more than a couple of $100. It's very expensive, and it hasn't seen a decline in price in the format of the Rashad port, especially the foil version. It's kind of the flagship of all the ports out there. From port to starboard, this card has been drifting down in price, and it's less than $10. If you want to get a reprinted copy from 25 edition, now is sub $10, and you can pick it up very cheap. Another card, a land. Slowly moving down is the Horizon Canopy, a Selesnya land that lets you fix your mana base. So one of these rare lands. The Canopy was actually quite expensive when it came out. I remember this because it's got this unique ability where you can pay one, sacrifice the Canopy, and draw a card. It's quite good. That being said, it was probably about $20 when it released. If we take a look here back at the history, this card was $20, and there was a call for players to create more of these Canopy lands. It's like even got its own namesake. Canopy lands like the Fiery Islet, the Horizon Canopy, and the other combinations that are kind of eluding me at this moment, where you can sack this land to draw a card late in the game. This is card draw advantage. It becomes quite good. And a lot of players were playing this when it released because it was a way to put extra cards into your hand, especially in the modern format, and it was up to about $20. Now, we've seen a bit of a downtick in price, especially on the Horizon and the Canopy lands. They're cheap right now. If you want to pick them up, this might be the time to do it. Again, we've been discussing the prices of Magic cards and the functionality of the MTG Stocks Premium. And we gave a little bit of a feedback to the man in charge over at the Stock Desk. This is coming to us every week. Our weekly winners by Mr. Arjun, a fellow who's been playing Magic the Gathering since Ice Age and mostly played the legacy format. 10 years ago, he founded the MTG Stocks site out of a labor of love because he wanted him and his friends to try and time the market and find a better way to buy Magic singles to play with. Since then, the man from the Netherlands has been putting time and effort into this site to bring you folks some more ways to help you on your Magic the Gathering journey. I only have a few minutes to stop by. I'm off to be an annoyance elsewhere. Enjoy the stream, Big Daddy Mike. Nice to have you with us. May the sun be on your face and the wind at your back. Dustin Cullihall. All right. So speaking of Pioneer, here's my man with the trio plan. I'll be playing in a Teams event with Dustin coming up very soon, a couple of weeks here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford the cabbage to boil the Sorin deck because these cards have been spiking so much in price. It's unbelievable. Don't buy into the Sorin deck just to be competitive. Oh, what the heck? What can you do? All right, greetings from around the world, people who tune in from everywhere to join me on a finance journey here this morning where we talk about the prices of Magic cards and what's moving and what's shaking in the world of Magic the Gathering cards. It's not that hard to join me here in the morning when we get up and we get moving and we get shaking and we get grooving and we get quaking out in the world. Whatever you got to do to make the world a better place, please embrace it. We know we're all doing the best that we can in this economy to move the world and create some value out there by whatever. Like I have a full-time job. I work just like you do. You know, I like to get some fun into my Magic the Gathering collection, but I don't like it when I buy cards and they crash in price. I like to find undervalued cards and pick them up and get them into my collection. And there's nothing better than seeing the price of Magic cards spiking and going up in price when you've already got them locked and loaded into your collection. Without further ado, what is that sound? What is that sound? I think that's the time for us to start moving and shaking. in our seats here this morning. It's time for your movers and the shakers of the week. Saddle up, sit down, grab yourself a coffee. I got some coffee. I'm going to have a little sip with you folks. It's good. A little bacon and eggs. I've been good. No ice cream on Thursday, none on Friday, none on Saturday. But then Sunday, might have a little ice cream. And Mrs. Alfonso was worried that the fish she bought on Friday weren't swimming together on Saturday, so I told her not to worry. Saturday's not a school day. Some cheap puns here this morning for you folks. Let's take a look at the movers and the shakers list. We're going to do a recap as we discussed our weekly winners for the week. Let's take a look at the cards that are moving the most on the movers and the shakers list. Let's go. I thought Brody called on sick today. There he is. Nice to have you with us, Mr. Super Backer. Thanks for always having my back. You know, I saw your message pop up in the comments, and I thought, I got to get busy and bring you this stream, Michael. Nice to have you with us. I thought I'd check in one more time, and there he is. All right, coming in from Boston, Michael Superbacker. We got people from all over the world. Another fellow Canadian, that's Big Mike Hatcher, the Magic Historian, joining us here this morning. We got Dustin Cullahall from down south in Canada, Lower Mainland, BC. We got people from the Hillbilly from the Woods joining us here this morning. We got all kinds of folks tuning in. And Mr. DJ bringing us some sweet chin music. Let's talk about what's moving and shaking here this morning. This is your weekly movers and shakers. This is everything included, including the kitchen sink, every single Magic card in every single format. What do we do here? Modern Monday, Tuesday Pioneer, Popper Wednesday, Legacy Thursday, and Friday is the day where we like to take a look at the entire week and see what's been moving and what's been shaking in the world of Magic the Gathering cards. So let's go. What do we got at the top of the list here this morning? We've got Earthquake. Shaking and quaking. It couldn't even be more appropriate, right? Shaking and quaking is this card, an Earthquake. From the beta edition, some of the 88%. Do we believe it? Let's take a look at the chart on this card to see if it's actually makes any sense. 88%. I think we're going to start to see some of these beta edition cards moving. All the black bordered old stuff people want to get into their collection. With the economy being what it is, and I think we're going to have another 8 to 16 months of low prices just based on George Tritch's periods when to make money. So these cards like this that players want to get into their collection simply because they are old, antique, rare artifacts that can be picked up for a bit of a discount right now. I mean, there are cheaper versions of Earthquake, of course. We've got all kinds of different versions that cost, little to nothing. 50 cents, 77 cents, $30.75 if you want a gold border. This card's been reprinted so many times, but in this economy, the black bordered cards seem to be what collectors want to pick up. This card here, let's take a look. I'm just going to shrink down a little bit for you here, folks. Shroom. Brody's just shrinking a little bit in the stream. Let's take a look. Let's pull back the chart on this one here. We've got Bitcoin making a run up to a potential all-time high. And what does that mean? Well, it means that people out there are going to have a little bit of disposable money. If people are selling things like Bitcoin, that's good for the economy because people have a little bit more money to spend on Magic cards. Perhaps this card has been higher in price in the past. It definitely has. Speaking of all-time highs, it's been as much as $1,000 in and around War of the Spark and has steadily hovered around the $1,000 mark in until the Streets of New Capenna and the Phyrexia all will be one set. This card is now down quite a bit, probably 50% off its all-time high, sitting at about $500. Seeing it take a little price spike this week, it's not something that I would be alarmed with. When you see that 88%, you got to kind of look at the chart and say, well, it's 88% up from what? Well, it was certainly down from its all-time high and taking a poke up here, 88% back up to $600. But this is there's lots of playable versions of this card that you can get for cheaper than a couple of dollars. If you're a baller and you're balling on a budget, maybe the beta version is one that you want to get. But like, let's take a look here. Let's have a look here. Stay tuned. Brody's going to bring a live dinosaur on set. Raw. Amulet Titan playing it in modern. Really, Amulet Titan. Judas the Carnage Connoisseur, the Dragon. Yes, any dragon decks. This is a great include to a dragon deck because your dragons are going to have flying, right? And a board wipe for land-based creatures. The Earthquake might be a way to wipe the board of your opponent's pesky 1/1s and 1/2s in a deck like a white deck that plays stacks. It's got like Mother of Runes, Giver of Runes, Thalia. Oh, it's another great way to deal with Thalia. A 1 mana Earthquake will get rid of a lot of pesky 1/1s, dwarfs, elves, any mana dorks, anything with 1 toughness. A cheap 2 mana Earthquake will be enough to wipe them off the board. And we see that it's included in the Dragons deck. Yeah, 1 red and X. So like a 2 mana Earthquake is enough to take out all 1 toughness creatures that are on the board. So plenty of decks playing it. It seems play in modern. I just want to take a look at the Amulet Titan deck to see if they put it in the sideboard or is it in the main? Is it in the side or in the main? In the side or in the main? Do you guys want to see if you're heading to a restaurant, would you order this on the side or would you have it as the main course? I don't actually see it in this deck list here. Perhaps a little bit of false information. Doesn't mean there isn't a Titan deck out there playing it, but this one here, perhaps, it's a bit of a misnomer. Don't see it. I would say it's probably a card that we're going to see in the sideboard. Where are we here? Spells, Summoner Pact, Explore, Stomping Ground, Radiant Fountain, Defense Grid, Bone Crusher Giant, Dismember Firespout. Not seeing it here on this particular deck list. Doesn't mean it's fake news, but there are other deck lists that are playing it. Coach says main course with a side of salt. Yes, if you're playing it main board, you might want to add a little side of salt to go with this. If there's a Commander tournament coming up tomorrow, we've got, it's fake news. Exactly. What would life be without a little fake news, right? Let's have a little cup of coffee. So I'm going to be heading out with T. Freezy today, a good buddy of mine, and Mr. Killfoil, somebody who kills for foils. We're going to be play testing our Commander decks for the tournament tonight, and I'm going to hopefully drag a buddy of mine along who's trying to get into Commander competitively. I mean, he likes to play for fun. Sam does. And I'm going to drag Sam along with me if I can, so we can take a look at the meta game and some of these more competitive decks to see what the meta game is all about and introduce him to some other players who may be able to up his game. So I'm going to try and drag Sam along for the ride. What's this? Jace's Archivist, up 46%. There's no way this is right. This can't be right. The list version. Do you see this price over here? This is uncanny. This can't be real. $529. When we see something like this appear on the movers and the shakers list, I say, no, this is fake news. 101. Jace's Archivist. Don't be fooled when you see these cards spiking. Always do a little research or tune in with me. I've been had before when I wake up in the morning and I see a card spiking, several 100%. Doesn't mean you want to rush out and buy the Archivist. Let's see what it does. It's a creature Vidalcan Wizard, 2/2 for 3 manas, 2 blue and 1 each. And you can pay 1 and tap it, so each player discards his or her hand and draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. Actually, I would like to play this in a wheel deck or a shoulder deck or perhaps a Grixis Rog side deck that's playing the wheel. Seems pretty good. A wheel on a stick, a meal on a stick, and a deal on a stick at $529? No way. We could probably find it cheaper. But holy smokes, where's the data coming from for this? Magic 2012, the foil version is $12. The list version, $530. It can't be real. We can find it for $5 in the 2012 edition. Commander 2013 is only $5.50. It should be super fast. It still should be super fast. I remember this card used to be 50 cents. Bacon on a stick. Holy smokes. Look at the chart on this. This can't be real. There's got to be something pushing it. You know what I think it is? Here's my prediction. Now, These websites that present to you folks moving and shaking data, they pull data, especially this one, they pull data from all over the internet, including listings, market listings, people who have listed copies of this card, stores included, eBay sellers, TCG player sellers. They take the medium price, it scrapes the internet, right? They make algorithms and programs that scrape the internet to find all the sales data on this card and for people selling them. And if somebody perhaps missed a zero or a decimal point, and instead of listing this card for $5.29, maybe they missed a decimal point and listed it for $529. That's probably what has happened here. Let's take a look here. Decks using it, plenty of decks using it. Nekuzar the Mind Razor, of course, the Locust God. Any commander that's got a wheel effect on them is going to be friendly with this card. It's going to be very good. Heliod the Radiant Dawn, Xyrus the Withering Storm, and Keza the Augur of Agonies. Alenda the Azor Jacevin's Prodigy, Melek the Izzet Paragon, Arun the Shifting Flame, and Quain the Interminant Meddler. That's the Rabbit, the Group Hub deck. So I'm thinking, I don't see any listings here for this card. Maybe let's take a look at the list and see if we got any listings from Card Kingdom here. It's not showing me any lists, so I'm thinking this is not showing us any listings. So I'm thinking this is a pricing error by somebody who put it up for sale, missing a decimal point. I wouldn't go out, and please do not go out and spend $529 on this card or anything more than $5 because this is what we call a false indication, right? It's a piece of bad data. It's an outlier. It's something that is a red herring, something that's going to throw you off on your Magic the Gathering finance journey. So don't be fooled. That can happen. It's happened to me before. I've woken up and seen a card spiking and thought maybe I can rush out and get a deal on it somewhere, and I maybe overpaid for it. Then I realized that, a couple of weeks later, it was a falsehood, a false indication, some fake Magic the Gathering finance news, and I got had. So I paid over, $100 for a copy of Relentless Assault from Portal 3 Kingdoms because it was spiking in price, but it was a false indication, and then people offload their copies for half of that. Maybe you'll see some copies pop up for $250 of the Jace's Archivist, and then you'll think you'll be getting a good deal, but you're really not. If you're playing a certain player competitively and you know a player plays a certain deck or decks, or if they were facing player B who has another deck type they usually use, would that affect what deck you would play? Say if you have two or more decks. Yes, it does. Now, yes, Mr. Michael Superbacker, I struggled for a few years trying to build more than one commander deck at a time. It's difficult for me to put together a plethora of Magic the Gathering commander decks because they are expensive and there's some one-ofs that you just can't, I can't really afford, multiple copies of certain cards. So I would have to start rotating cards from my main deck that I play into other decks. But it's nice if you have a couple of different decks, like a different power levels, a casual deck, a more competitive deck, and then maybe your most competitive deck. I tend to go to events or play groups, generally with the same play group, and I rotate my decks to just for a couple of reasons. One, because I want to build new decks and try different synergies of something that I'm interested in. And it might not be super competitive to begin with, but you always take a look at the metagame and see what other people are playing. Then, slowly, as you learn the game mechanics and how other people are winning, that one player where you just can't beat, like Dustin Cullahall, you sit down and play him 72 times in Modern and you just can't scratch a win off the guy's back, then you say, I got to do something different. So then I generally try to come up with a gameplay synergy that isn't focused directly on beating that one deck, but some sort of say, for example, your meta has a lot of people playing artifacts like Mana Crypt, Arcane Signet, lots of treasure tokens. Artifacts can be quite powerful, but if you look around at your meta group and you see that like lots of people are playing a lot of artifacts, then maybe adding some artifact removal in general is a better way to build another deck because then you're not sort of making yourself weak to one particular strategy. You're adding a synergy that is good against all of those decks. So when you head to a tournament, you can kind of keep like right now. I've got the Rog Silas Ren deck, and I've been tweaking that based on our meta. It might not be good in another meta if I were to travel and go down south and maybe play some EDH with Dustin, but it gives me the best shot of competing well in the local meta. Thanks for breaking that down. There are so few list cards on the market that the data is easily skewed. Yes. And then Dustin says there's a classic error on Goldfish of false look at the list. Goldspan Dragon was going for 1K just a little while ago. All right. Twist your minds around this card. This is a card that now keep in mind 1v1 commander is another format. I'm starting to realize that like there's Canadian Highlander, which is a 1v1 100 card singleton format. And then there's 1v1 Commander, which is different than Canadian Highlander because Highlander has a point system altogether. It's just a little more complicated. And then there's like 4-player Commander. So depending on what your meta is, generally you're going to be sitting down with at least 3 to 4 people. Sometimes you'll get a 5-pod going, but 5 is kind of the worst number for me in a commander game. 5 people is a little bit hard because it's very taxing to try and control a board state with 4 other opponents. A little easier with 3 other opponents, even better with 2. A card like this can be actually good in Commander on 1v1, but it's not so good in multiplayer. So this card here, Mind Twist, again, a black bordered card. There's plenty of versions of this card out there, especially from Unlimited or even the revised edition that'll only cost you $5. And this one's a black and X like the Earthquake card. It makes target opponent discard X cards from their hand at random. Even better in a 1v1 format, but this card in a multiplayer game can be kind of backbreaking because you're gonna play one spell, it only hits one opponent. You're almost better to find cards that are like a 3-for-1. That's what my opinion is. Each opponent discards a card, or each opponent sacrifices a creature. So a card like this is quite playable, quite good in a black control deck. I mean, this card was included in the early days of Magic the Gathering, and actually when the black control deck won the World Championships of Magic the Gathering, this card was in it. So we saw this card as early as the early 90s. Black rack control deck was made this card popular. You got Hypnotic Spectre. Black was the original control deck. As a lot of people don't like to admit it, but the original control deck was actually the black deck, where we would try and control the game by making sure our opponent didn't have cards in hand. Then blue came along, and that became like the deck pioneered by Brian Wiseman. Then blue became famously the control deck of choice for players, the most popular one. But originally, black had a form of playing a control deck using Mind Twist to rip cards out of your opponent's hand. The Hypnotic Spectre, which when it deals damage to a player, they discard a card at random, as well as Hymn to Torak and Disrupting Scepter. Couple more black cards that would control the game by making your opponent discard 2 cards at random. So a first turn Hypnotic Spectre off of a Dark Ritual would be quite a good start. This Hymn to Torak, making a player discard 2 cards at random, following up with a Mind Twist to rip cards out of your opponent's hand. And then finally, landing this card, the Disrupting Scepter. The artifact that makes target player discard a card. This is a way of taking control of a game and making sure that you're going to outpace your opponent by having more cards in your hand. You see, there's good ways to get card advantage in Magic the Gathering. Either destroying permanents. You never want to go 1-for-1 card for card in a 4-player game. You want to get like 2-for-1s or 3-for-1s, so that you're doing something to each of your opponents and not just picking on one opponent. It can be quite powerful to pick on one player, but it generally leaves you open to swings, attacks, and spells from other players. You might put one player behind, but you're going to find yourself slipping farther and farther behind from the other 2 players that you're not picking on. So black was a great control deck, and it still to this day, cards like the Rack, where it punishes your opponents for not having very many cards in their hand, makes the Mind Twist still relevant to this day. In 1v1 Commander, it's quite good. I want to take a look and see what decks are playing it in this day and age. Where are we playing this? Nekudar, the Mind Razor, Turgrid, the God of Fright. Okay, so Turgrid. Is this a commander list? Yes, Turgrid. This card is so good as a mono black commander. So let's talk about Turgrid for a second. It's a 4/5, it's God, and it costs 2 black and 3. So this card lands on the battlefield, and I don't think we're playing it as the Lantern. See, the Lantern is the artifact that taps, makes a player lose 3 life unless they sack an online permanent or discard a card, but that's not where we want to be. We want to play Turgrid, God of Fright. And it says, whenever opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a card, you may put that card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So every time a player discards a permanent, you get it. If every time a player sacks a permanent, you get it. This card is super powerful. Now, you can build around Turgrid, the God of Fright, but you're going to have to pay only one color. The Mind Twist is probably good in this particular deck because it is mono black. We're probably going to see cards like the Bowmasters as well as Gary. What's Gary? I don't even know the real name for Gary. Gary, Gray Merchant of Asphodel, right? I'm pretty sure we're probably going to see Gray Merchant in here. Maybe not. All these mono black cards that make players sacrifice permanents. So, like, you got Rankle, the Master of Pranks. Each player discards a card. See, something like this is quite good compared to Mind Twist because each player discards a card. Each player sacrifices a creature. Even with Liliana the Veil, where it gets everybody but you get a 3-for-1 off Rankle. You get a 3-for-1 off Liliana the Veil. I would say, where's Lily in this deck? She should be in here. Yes. And this is even better. Each player discards a card. Well, with Turgid on the battlefield, you discard a card, but your opponents discard as well. And then when their stuff goes to the graveyard, you get it onto the battlefield. So Liliana is almost a 6-for-1 because as each player discards a card, they're down a card, and then you're up 3 permanents. So it's that synergy that makes this card so good. So the single target spells in Commander generally are powerful for the time, but long and late in the game, they don't seem to be that good. Mr. Garen Jotter, nice to see you here. It's Friday. Good buddy of mine. I'm looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks down south at the Trios tournament. Now, I know we're friends, but, we might have to become arch enemies for a weekend. No, it'll be good to see you and good to play some games with you folks. Gary Hickman, a fella who's been crushing it in competitive Magic the Gathering. In fact, he's been winning invites to events. He's been crushing it. Some of his deck lists are even featured on MTG Top 8 now because he's been top 8ing and making points and getting invites to events like Face to Face and across Canada. So I like to hook up with Gary over the weekend in a couple of weeks here just so I can catch up with the fella. So Gary isn't our friend in trios. Exactly. Gary Gary isn't our friend in trios. All right. All right. Well, we're going to be on see, there's a little bit of see, the reason that Brody got the invite to go to trios with Dustin Collahall is because Gary might have forged his own team with a couple of locals. So I think it was going to be Dustin, Gary, and Travis that were all playing on a team. Instead, Gary's going to partner up with some of his other friends from Kelowna and join us for a little bit of fun. So then Gary bringing his own team together. Brody got the call to fill in for Gary. It's some big shoes to fill, but I'm willing to try it, right? You guys will be free wins in trios. All right. Nevertheless, we're having a little fun here. It's Friday, and I'm glad to see you guys. I love you, and it's nice to catch up with you. We got here. There's another card I used to love to play. This card, the Keldon Warlord. This was so good. This card was great. All right, let's check it out. Keldon Warlord, this used to be the red card. The art on it is pretty fantastic. It's some Kev Brockschmidt giving us the original art on Keldon Warlord. This card was so cool back in the day of Alpha Beta revised, Alpha Beta Unlimited revised. The art on this card was so cool. It's an XX creature. I think it's now Star Star. But the power and toughness of this card is equal to the number of non-wall creatures you control, including the Warlord. So he's a 1/1, but he gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control. If you have two other creatures, he's a 3/3. And if those creatures are killed, then he immediately gets smaller. But look at the rippling muscles on this card and the black stallion that he's driving. And he's got this big sword and some horns and a helmet on, lots of fangs and everything else. This guy's ripped. I mean, what about this card doesn't speak terror across the board? Now, there's a thing called power creep where this card isn't as good as it used to once be, but it still leaves a place in our hearts for the Keldon Warlord, a great piece of nostalgia, Magic the Gathering art, and a red creature that used to be quite threatening in the day. It's an uncommon card, not exactly rare, but still quite good. You can get other versions of it. When was the last time it was reprinted? Like the revised copy is only worth 30 cents. Fifth edition saw a reprint. And then, I don't see we're seeing any reprints of this card anytime on the list or anywhere whatsoever because people are just probably not going to want it because there's so many better Magic cards out there. I always wanted to make the Warlord work because the art was so amazing, but it always crapped out. Me too. I know. I really did. And then we had a card like Martin Stromgal that was printed. Everybody this card was the Martin Stromgald, when it was printed in Ice Age, this was like the buddy with Keldon Warlord. We're like, this card is going to be so good. He's on the reserve list. So, look at Martin. Same mana cost as the Keldon Warlord. 2 red and 2. It's a human knight. He's also on a horse and he's got a sword. So, him and Martin are best buddies. Looking good. Except Martin's on the reserve list. And whenever Martin attacks, other attacking creatures get +1/+1 till end of turn for each attacking creature other than Martin. So, he buffs all your dudes. And then when Martin blocks, other blocking creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn for each blocking creature other than Martin. So Martin's a 1/1. He dies quite easily. He's legendary. He can be your commander. And there's definitely ways to build him. Let's see if he's got his own deck. Martin's been overlooked for a long time. He's only $6.30. But they think this card was on the bottom 10 of Brody's reserve list cards that no one cares about. He saw a spike in around Kaldheim here. Let's take a look here. Martin hit 30, $40, and then all of a sudden, I think must have been some synergy, right? When Martin was printed, the Keldon Warlord became even more of a buddy. Dex playing it, Ishin the 2 Heavens as 1, Pia Nalar, the Consuls of Revival, a few decks playing Martin Stromgald. Is there any decks playing the Warlord? Cranko the Mob Boss. I guess go wide strategies in red, including Goblins, are going to play the Warlord. So Martin, the Warlord, and a few other red cards for 4 mana, making creatures bigger, make himself bigger. I feel like Martin and the Warlord together might do well because Martin can buff the Warlord. So you got a bunch of creatures with the Cranko Mob Boss. You get a lot of tokens, and then the Warlord and Martin swing in. Then Warlord basically is a power and toughness equal to 1 plus the number of critters you got, and then Martin doubles them up, makes them even bigger. Probably have to put trample on him. Is mono red build here? Cranko the Mob Boss? Yes, this guy makes X 1/1 red goblin creature tokens. So Martin probably fit in this deck quite well with the Keldon Warlord. I feel Mind Twist Revised and Unlimited look pretty much exactly the same. Yes, they are quite the same. They got the white bordered, little subtle differences in the printings there, Michael. The cost is mainly the main difference. The $5 for the revised version of the Mind Twist, and then I think we're up to what are we at for the revised version of the Mind Twist? I just want to take a quick look for the white border version. 50? Is it $50? Unlimited, $148. Holy smokes! All right, let's take a look. If you want to play the card and you want to try it, don't go hard on the unlimited version or the black bordered version. Maybe try a revised version. I think it's even been reprinted in other sets since and can be found for only a couple of pennies. $5 from revised. Yes. 30th anniversary reprinted, but who wants to play the 30th anniversary anyway? Amonkhet Invocations. Yes. Got a sneeze coming. Hold on. Oh, it's a good one. Almost blew my brains out with that one. Whatever's left of the brain. You see, you could probably see my brain just firing out my left or right ear like a grain of salt. when I sneeze. So how do you tell them apart? All right, here's how we tell them apart. This mainly the artist's signature. This is the best way to tell a revised card apart from any unlimited cards. For one, the unlimited versions are going to seem a little bit cloudier with the printing. And then if you look down here at the artist signature on all unlimited cards, you notice there's no date on them. So that's one way to tell them apart. Now, some revised cards that have been around for a long time, they've been beat up and maybe start looking a little bit like an unlimited card. But look at the art. Look at the color on this one. So there's also no date on this card either. But you notice that the artist signature or the artist credit down at the bottom of the card, the spacing and the alignment for the revised version, see how it seems to sit right on the bottom of the border. So this example for the Julie Barrow artist credit, it's very tight to the bottom and it's against the white border, very close to it. And then when we look at the unlimited version, the same card, you see the spacing where the artist name is actually evenly spaced in between the text box and it's not sitting down along the border. That's one of the only ways you can kind of tell sometimes, apart from the fact that the art might be a little bit cloudy on the revised version, or sorry, the unlimited version. See how the art is a little darker? A little darker in the park. It's dark in the park, Michael. So we got the artist signature as a telltale sign, and then like look at the color. Basically, the limited version looks a little washed out. Like I say, sometimes these revised cards get a lot of play, some sun bleaching, and they look a little more weathered, and they may appear like an unlimited card. Even the text border around the card is a little more crisp. Even the wording, you see the text box is a little more compressed on the one on the left, which is the unlimited version. And then the artist credit is centered in between the two, the text box and the white border. And then on the revised version, the artist signature is not centered and it's down below the bottom of the border. So that's the easiest way for me to tell them apart. Sometimes, you know, you have a little bit of debates with people. They say, well, that's an unlimited. No, it's a revised. And I'll get the cheap one for now. The unlimited artist text is farther to the left as well. Yes, thank you, coach. Very good fact. The centering of the artist credit. I noticed that the new sets, they have abbreviations for like Brothers of War, Dominaria, etc. Yeah, and some of these older sets, like they didn't have the color-coded set symbol to let you know what the card was as far as rarity. You didn't know if it was a common, uncommon, or rare. You had to look it up in a magazine to decide and try and figure, unless you opened it in a pack, and then the only indication you would have is like where it came, where in the pack was it? Was it in the rare slot or the uncommon slot? But if you're just picking up singles or you're trading with your friends, it was very difficult to tell what the rarity of some cards were. I, figured some uncommons were rares, but now they've sort of, because all the set symbols, or earlier on, there were no set symbols until Ice Age, and then we started getting set symbols. And then they started color coding the set symbols so they made it easier for players to discern the difference between rares, commons, and uncommons. Unfortunately, some of the older cards that don't have that, you got to do a little research on your own to try and spot the differences. One of these things don't look like the other. The black outline in the border is thicker on Unlimited. All right. I see this card here, the Candlestick. Brody be nimble, Brody be quick, Brody buy out the Candlestick. There's a card I'm so fond of. I was pumped when the Brothers War set was released. I thought this card, out of any card, was going to be one that spiked in price because we knew we were going to get Urza's Workshop, right? We got Mishra's Workshop, an insanely powerful land that taps for 3 mana. Like if you can untap it with the Candlestick, you can make 6 cast artifact spells. I figured we'd get a better workshop from Urza, but Urza's Workshop is a little bit underwhelming. But I thought if any card was going to spike with the Brothers War because of a decent land that got printed, it would be the Urza's Workshop, and this card was going to move. But so, I'm very fond of this card. This is probably one of my favorite speculations. Disclaimer. So this one's $850. It's a very favorite speculation on mine. And the reason it's a famous speculation is simply because land. Real estate's always a good part to park money into in Magic the Gathering. Where's the didgeridoo spike, right? Well, we're going to have to wait for. So, this is another speculation. We get a good Minotaur, like a decent Angrath, not in a Planeswalker, but in the creature type. I think we'll see a spike in Didgeridoo. If we ever get Minotaurs that are actually like competitive, we get some better one. Like even the Heb is good, but we need something better than that. Morog is good, but we need something a little better than that. But if we get a game changing, a busted Minotaur, then I think something like the Didgeridoo is going to spike in price. And if we get some overpowered lands coming out in some new sets, like lands that tap for multiple manas, this card eventually, I mean, it's a staple. It's on the reserve list. It's an uncommon or a rare, whichever way you want to slice it, from the Antiquities block. It's played in Cloud Post. So Cloud Post is a legacy deck that makes lots of mana. So you get your posts onto the battlefield and then you untap them because you get mana for each post. So this card is quite playable in Legacy, especially in posts and with lands like Urza lands that tap for multiple manas. The Candelabra of Tawnos can help you ramp. I think if we ever see a new print of a card, a land card that's like a little bit that deserves to be tapped more than once, then we're going to see some interactions with this card. It has to be good enough. There has to be a land printed that's good enough to go straight to Legacy. That's my opinion. If we ever get a land printed that needs to be untapped and is good enough to go to straight to Vintage and Legacy, that's where this card is going to spike. It could be some time. We could be holding our breath. It could take several years to get it. Maybe it will never come, but I'm hopeful that maybe game design, like the way the Wizards game design and playtesting is going, it seems like they'll just print just about anything without giving it a second look. So we need another high tide. Yes. Yes, oh, no, high tide. So look at this card. It was spiked. This is the last time it was bought out. It was around 2021. And then this card here definitely spiked in price. It let's see here. Spiked in price right after Zendikar and Kaldheim. It hit the $3,000 mark. I don't know if that's just graded copies, but I can seem to always find graded copies of this card selling for anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 up to 4,000 or 5,000 bucks for a graded like a 9 or 9.5. They're quite expensive. I think with the market and the economy being what it is, this card's going to remain low for a period of time, and without any extra synergy with a new land being printed, this card's not going to move anywhere for quite some time. I think it's probably safe to say this card drifting down. What was the last support level we saw this card at? Was it 600 bucks? So like that's the latest support level. I could see this drifting lower and lower until it like reaches the old support level of 650 bucks, and then collectors or speculators might start picking this card up again. Another reason I like speculating on artifacts is because it's like lands, speculating on lands. Lands can go in just about any deck. Colorless cards, artifacts can be included in just about any deck, so they're not pigeonholed to one color or one archetype. They can fit into just about any deck, and artifacts being colorless, for me, they have a better possibility of being a decent speculation because of the utility. Colorless, they fit in just about any deck. They fit in Eldrazi that are just straight up colorless decks. You can add them into variants of the Cloud Post deck. Let's see, decks using it. The High Tide. Here we are. Dustin Collahall mentioning this. The Legacy deck High Tide is playing it, where we're going to tap for multiple manas. Urza, Chief Artificer, Ave, Progenitor Ooze, and Roga of Kirkkeep, the Gadwick the Wizened, Tishana Voice of Thunder, and Unesh the Cryosphinx Sovereign. All playing it. 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 top commander decks all playing it in this Legacy deck, High Tide. I'm curious to see how High Tide is playing it. So High Tide, let's take a look at that card. It's the namesake of this deck here. High Tide, 1 mana. Until end of turn, whenever a player taps an island for mana, that player adds an additional blue. So we don't, this thing, I think this was a Fallen Empires card, if I'm not mistaken. The very first printing of this, Fallen Empires, a 50-cent card with multiple art versions on it. This card is so good because we didn't get a lot of ramp in blue, and we probably never will. I think people look back and say, that what was a mistake giving blue so much ramp? Like islands tapping for double? Ugh, that seems scary. So there's obviously ways to abuse this card, like Palancrone and High Tide making extra mana. You can go infinite. That will spike this. Another High Tide? Okay. so much flavor in Magic the Gathering, and they make Fallout instead, right? So that's why I'm almost betting and hedging on game design going just willy-nilly, a bunch of crazy kids in a candy store on a sugar high printing whatever and whenever cards that they want. And it's quite possible that due to some oversight in game development, we'll eventually get something that works well with some of these older cards. You got Mind Desire, Merchant Scroll, Cutting Wish, Turnabout, Force of Will, L'Oreal Revealed, Dress Down, quite a good card, is even in Commander, and then 3 Candelabras. Give me 3 Pina Coladas and Candelabras. Mono Blue, High Tide, Fae of Wishes. What other creatures are we playing? What wins you the game here? High Tide, Ponder, Merchant Scroll, Cunning Wish, Turnaround, Lorien Revealed. The Wish card gets you into the sideboard, and then what does it get you? The Blue Sun Zenith. Perhaps we're going to mill our opponents to death. As a huge Fallout fan, I'm so stoked for Fallout. I watched the trailer on Amazon there. It looks kind of good. Episode 0. What else we got? We got Candelabra, Tropical Island. This is what I learned a new term the other day from Albert Lindbottom, I think, or Lindblom, rather, or somebody I met up with on X who's a lands player. And he plays lands in Legacy, strictly lands, always building and rebuilding the lands deck. And something that I didn't understand, I had to ask him. He said, I played against a wet version of the lands deck. And I had to ask him, I said, what is a wet version of the lands deck? He says, it's the one that plays the tropical island. So if it plays blue, then it's a wet deck. I don't make, I don't make the rules. I don't come up with this stuff. That's just the way it is. A wet lands deck. If it's playing blue, it's got the trop. That means it's wet. $374 for the collector's edition. Wishing for Blue Sun and Jace is a lab man. So I am considering picking up some of these collector's edition cards, not only just the dual lands, because I think that the Moxen and the Black Lotus and some of the power cards in collector's edition are so attractive in price right now. I don't see anybody having a problem playing collector's edition cards in Commander or Legacy at tables because they are, functionally Magic cards. But the revised version of this card is $520. So now all of a sudden, with the prices of Magic cards going so sky high, especially in the reserve list and the dual lands making up a huge percentage of the Magic the Gathering card economy. If you take the print run of Revise and you figure out how many dual lands there are out there, that's a huge dollar amount if you were to add them all up. So a big chunk of Magic the Gathering money and economy as a whole is stacked up in these lands, these dual lands. So I think myself, I think I've bought one collector's edition card in my Magic the Gathering finance journey, and that was the Unholy Strength, simply because it had the old art on it. And since then, some of the pentagram has been removed from Unholy Strength. So I would say not a bad place to be looking. If you want to reduce price on real estate, including dual lands, power cards, Time Twister, even Ancestral Recall, Black Lotus, some of the old reserve list cards, I think that the collector's edition, the international collector's edition, is going to be a good place to park some investments. Now, not financial advice, but I've seen the spikes on these collector's edition cards going for like a full set. I remember when the collector's edition came out, mind you, it was $150 for a box, and it's like you get one of every card. And I was like, that's stupid. Why would I spend $150 to buy a box of all these collector's edition cards with square corners when I could just buy the actual cards? And now that turns out, in hindsight, that like a full box of the collector's edition sealed is probably about $20,000 or more, perhaps a little less in this economy. Maybe there's people that have them and they're trying to get rid of them for a little less. But I would say some of the collector's edition cards, if the dual lands are so far out of reach, the collector's edition might be a place to get them. Zephyr, like a green deck that splashes blue for counter magic equals wet green. Thank you, Zephyr. Zephyr, nice to see you here. Usually wet means a splash of blue. Well, I didn't know that. As somebody who played Magic the Gathering for a long time, I'd never heard of that term, so I'm always learning new things. And that's part of the reason I like doing the stream, because I can learn from you folks. I can formulate some thoughts and ideas, and you folks can put your opinions in the chat and correct me where I go wrong to try and get a little smarter up here. As I always like to say,
Buy low, sell high, that's my motto. I may just quit my job at the power plant and become a full-time stock market guy.
thank you, Zepper. Looks like a new viewer here. First time commenter. Nice to see you on the channel. Everybody give him a welcome. Brody makes me. Oh, Brody is making this deck wet. There. All right. I wish they still made these kind of products at reasonable prices. I play wet mono blue. That's right. Wet mono blue. Of course, it's inherently wet. If 30th anniversary edition had been reasonably priced, we would have been drafting it, cracking it, playing it. Players would have loved it. I like moist decks. The moist decks. A splash of blue, making moistly moist decks is a word some people just hate, right? Always like to come up with new pet names for cards and mispronunciations of existing cards. Moist Jund, including blue, was sick. Uh, all right, Swords to Plowshares, limited edition beta, creeping up in price, $433. For those of you folks who like old school Magic the Gathering, this is a format where you can only play cards from I think 93 and 94, or any cards that have the original art on them. Now, don't be fooled. There's plenty other cheap versions of this card, including printings from the Doctor Who set, World Championship deck, and Gold Border, Vintage Masters, plenty of other versions of this card for a lot cheaper, all the way down to about, I'm sure there's a dollar version here somewhere. $1 from the starter commander deck. You can get Swords to Plowshares for $1. Arguably the best removal spell in the game, and it was one of the greatest removal spells. Some people like it better than Path to Exile because they find giving the opponent some life rather than a land is even better. It's easier to beat your opponent a little bit more over the head and get that life total back down. You don't want to give them a land because you're going to get too far ahead. I need to get a beta unsummoned before they spike. Hello, Brody and all. Yeah, I'm fairly new. I've been lurking and catching these streams for the last week or so. Well, we're very happy to have you here. Thank you, Zephyr. I appreciate your comment, and don't be shy. Everyone's welcome here to share their thoughts and opinions. We got some good folks here. I would say the best viewers in the world who like to tune in and share some friendly thoughts, conversation. We like to have a little bit of fun and love seeing a lurker stop lurking. Welcome. You're more than welcome to join us each and every day when we talk Magic cards. We've got a good group of friends here. Even some of the big boys show up here. Ed the Dual Brain. We got the Magic Historian who stops in from time to time to join us for a little bit of fun on their journey in the morning when they're getting going. We got the Moxman who comes by. A few big boys show up and share support and a little bit of love for the channel. So it's nice to have you here. We got the coach in the house. Somebody's always had my back. So nice to have you with the Brody family. All right, Swords of Plowshares is one of the best removal spells in the game. $433. What are we going to do here? Let's take a look at the chart on this thing. And again, black border, probably old school, pushing it. Look at the spike on this. In Streets of New Capenna. Seems ridiculous here. When you see some of these plateaus where it goes flat, there's just not a lot of sales data to make an accurate market to depiction of this card. It just seems like there's not going to be a lot of sales of the beta to give us a really good idea of where this card is at. It's been sitting at $838, $433. A good indication that a card is really good is when some of the old versions, like the Alpha Beta Unlimiteds of these removal spell cards, 1-mana cards, are expensive. It means that the card is still good and super relevant to this day. Still played in old school, still played in Commander, played in Vintage. All these decks are using it. You can bet your bottom dollar that the Luris deck is playing it in Commander, Vintage, Legacy. So here's a card that's good in multiple formats, and this is sort of what I'm talking about when we see a card like Echoing Deeps, a card that I'm speculating on because it goes into Vintage decks or it goes into Legacy. When a card is if we get a land printed that's good enough to untap with Candelabra and it goes straight to Legacy, or it goes straight to Modern from a new set, or it goes straight to Vintage even, then that's a pretty good indicator that the card is powerful and good enough to play in this day and age, regardless of what version you have, even if it's the $1 version. I don't care. Removing an opponent's creature from the game, playing the beta Swords of Plowshares may look cool, but it's just as effective playing the $1 version and removing a creature from the game for $1 rather than 400 something dollars. The beta versions, well, I think it's collectors. Now with the prices, the prices of Magic cards softening in this economy, I think the collectors, who people who want to get these old black border cards, like Mike the Alpha Hoarder, somebody who's like really wants to pick up as many versions of the alpha cards, those guys are having a heyday right now, a field day. They can slowly buy up these old copies of these old cards without anybody noticing, with softening prices, and increase their old collections of these black bordered cards quite easily while the market is soft. That's why we're not seeing a huge uptick, because as a whole, the strength of the Magic market, like say for example, there's a group of 100,000 Magic the Gathering players, but if the economy is so rough due to inflation and the prices of new Magic cards, a new collector's set box of the Modern Horizons 3, it's like 800 and something dollars. Out of the 100,000 players that are out there, who's going to pay $800 for a new collector's box? We'd rather buy single. But if we are struggling to pay our bills, maybe some people lost their jobs or, get cut hours due to the financial, circumstance of the economy, then it's, as a whole, there's not a lot of financial strength and stability in the market for Magic the Gathering players as a whole. And we've seen a downtick in the economy due to inflation, lost jobs, people not working as much as they would like to. So less money to spend on Magic cards, and especially with the cost of these new sets coming out every single week, it seems like we got 3 spoilers happening all at one time. And like the prices of these new cards are just so astronomical. I mean, we're just like, no, we can't do it. I got rent to pay. I got to buy food. Maybe we got kids. Maybe you got like commitments. You got bills to pay. You got a whole bunch of other priorities that you should be taking care of before we're spending $800 on some Modern Horizons 3. So as the strength as a Magic market altogether is low, some of these older cards, collectible ones, the black bordered, the alpha betas, the unlimited, they're only getting bought up by people who are financially well off enough to keep picking them up. Like, I mean, I'm certainly been scrutinizing my Magic the Gathering purchases over the last year more than ever. It's no joke. This card's actually quite good. Regrowth. I've seen this played in old school decks where the only green card in the deck is this one. It's the only card that was printed early in the game of Magic the Gathering. It's got great art on it. And this is something that people would cast, say, off of a Black Lotus. So I've seen a lot of old school decks playing the Regrowth. Return target card from your graveyard to your hand. So you can like crack the Black Lotus, put it in the graveyard, make 3 green, and then you return the Black Lotus to your hand, and then play it again, and then you can like net 4 mana off the Black Lotus. This will let you double Black Lotus. I mean, sure, you got to pay 2 for it, so you only go up 1 mana, but you can fix your mana costs. You can get that Sarah Angel out on the battlefield quite early with Regrowth. Like, let's say for example you got Plains. This is why this card is so darn good. If you got Plains, Black Lotus, Sarah Angel, and Regrowth in your opening hand, you can play the Plains for a white, you play the Black Lotus, and then you make 3 green, sack the Black Lotus, then you return the Black Lotus to your hand, and then you make 3 more white. 1, 4, 5, that's 5 mana. So you can turn one. This was why this card was so good, because you could use it with Black Lotus and Sarah Angel to turn 1 Sarah Angel. Sarah Angel was very good, very, very good card in the day. A 4/4 flying with vigilance, and this card is the way to get it out on turn 1, especially in old school, right? So let's take a look here. Sarah Angel. Sarah Angels. Let's take a decent older version of the card here, right? Sarah Angel, 5 mana for the 4/4 vigilance. So turn oneing this is quite good. The Black Lotus makes 3 mana, then the Regrowth gets it back. You tap your plains, you take the 1 mana, that's 2, and another 3 off the Lotus for the second time with Regrowth, and you get your turn 1 Sarah Angel. Quite a good way to close out a game, especially in old school or even in vintage. This day and age, there's more powerful spells, but old school is kind of restricted to the older cards. So the market oversaturation is not a good long-term business model. I agree with you. And then we got Bayou. Well, if you're like a hillbilly and you're born on a bayou, shout out to the MTG hillbilly who's here. This is another black card. Black green dual land and collector's edition coming up. The collector's edition starting to see a little bit more attractive purchases here. People picking up these collector editions because they're a cheaper alternative to the expensive revised and unlimited versions of dual land. Like I say, I've been sniffing around these collector's edition cards, and perhaps I need to get myself a couple of them. And I would say even these dual lands. This reminds me. This is just like looking in the rear view mirror or looking into a crystal ball that lets you look into the past. I mean, I look back at Bayou when it was $279 for the revised version, or even $600 for the unlimited version, and I always thought, no, that's way too much money for a dual land. I can't see myself picking it up. Like it's going to come down, or maybe I just in price denial. And it's like as time goes on, there was a time where the revised card was 279. Now the collector's edition has hit that mark. It's a pretty safe bet to say that like the collector's edition being the cheaper of all the versions of these dual lands will eventually get to the place where the revised and unlimited copy, or the revised copies for sure, are now. Just give it a little bit of time. Brody is so old, regrowth is now good because of Commander. Yes. Who said that? Come closer, Dustin. Come closer so I can see you. Speak into my good ear, right? I love being an old fart playing the game. Yes, it's good. The Illusionary Mask. Oh, here's a card. I think it's spiking. It's got to be spiking because of the turning face up mechanic. Let's look at this card. It's got a whole bunch of text on it. It's from the beta edition. It's on the reserve list. And this card is just wacky because it's got some crazy art on it by Amy Weaver. Love this artist, by the way. Okay, Illusionary Mask for 2 mana. This is the original morph card. Like, this is the original card that lets you play creatures for face down. 2 mana for this artifact. It's got some spirally eyes on it. X, you may choose a creature card in your hand whose mana cost could be paid by some amount of mana of all or some of the mana you spent on X. If you do, you cast that creature face down as a 2/2 creature without paying its mana cost. If the creature that if if the creature that spell becomes as it resolves has not been turned face up or would assign damage or dealt damage become tapped, instead is turned face up and assigns its damage, is dealt damage or becomes tapped, activated as sorcery. It's so wordy. It's painfully wordy. Okay, so you get to pay X. It could be any amount of mana. Some amount or all of the mana. So you can play any creature face down as a 2/2 for X. I mean, I'm thinking, I'm going to have to check the Gatherer, see if X can be cheaper than what its mana cost is. They sucked at templating Magic cards. So this is something you can put like a big creature down for X as a 2/2 creature, and then only when it's dealing damage or is targeted gets turned face up. Becomes tapped, then it's turned face up. And then it just assigns its combat damage. Or perhaps you could like put an Emrakul face down or a big Eldrazi or something that's just going to win you the game for a couple of manas. I'm going to have to do some research because I don't know how this card works exactly. It's quite complicated, and quite frankly, I don't know anybody who plays it. But now with the morph mechanic and turning creatures face up, there's like rebates on turning creatures face up. You may pay less mana to turn something face up. Perhaps this is why this card is seeing a little bit more price action. Let's take a look at the card chart on this one here. Illusionary Mask. Yeah, it's been pretty stable over the last few years. It's only cost you 2 mana, and it's been hovering around the $400 to $500 mark for quite some time. It's just sticking around. It's not seeing a lot of play, I don't think. So that's possibly why this card doesn't see a lot of volatility. Not a lot of ups and downs with this mask on. As we go behind the mask one more time. Deck's playing it. Okay, there's Yaris, the Roar of Old Gods. There's the deck for Brody. Senior Brody, the Yaris, the Boar of Old Gods. See, Dustin? This is the card for me. Old Boys Club, right? Yours the roar of the old gods, the gods with the dentures. Other creatures you control have haste. Whenever one or more face down creatures you control deals combat to a player, draw a card. Whenever a face down creature you control dies, return to the battlefield face down, under its owner's control. If it's a permanent card, then turn it face up. So this Illusionary Mask allows you to play creatures face down. And like, this is a perfect example of what I've been talking about with the candelabra. If there's something printed in a new set that works well with the candelabra card, very old card, just like the illusionary mask, then all of a sudden something like that is going to create some synergy of a long lost and forgotten card that people don't pay much attention to, and all of a sudden becomes very good. The old roar of the old gods, something pretty cool art on it. I don't like the border and the frame on this. I can't stand it. It doesn't look like a red green card. There's only like a touch of red and green at the top. Maybe there's just the mana symbol that gives us an idea what color identity of this card is. Yes, the new templates kind of suck. I can't think even the art box is off centered. It is skewed. It's turned sideways a little bit. It's like somebody just like threw this together. It's not centered. It's tweaked and it's off. It looks bad to me. It's bad card design. You want to talk about sucking at templating? Who thought this was a good idea? I don't know. OMG. So a Gruul deck playing the Mask. Amanarthus, the Ghostfire Initiate, Goblin Maskmaker, Taskmaker, Survivalist, Brood Hatch Nantuko, Den Protector, Destiny Spinner, Dwarven Bladesmith, Flourishing Bloomkin, and the Fugitive Codebreaker. All a bunch of Hydras and everything else. You want to play face down with this commander and turn them face up for fast. So you want to use the Mask to play your big stuff face down and then easily turn it face up with the Yaris Roar of the Old Gods. Quite interesting. Interesting. So, shall we see if we got some more news articles? I think I got time for one more for you folks here today. Of course I do. There's more time. I love it. Time to spend a little bit of quality time online with you folks here who enjoy tracking the prices of Magic Card. I want to thank new viewers, Zepper. I think that's how I say it. Correct me if I'm saying it wrong, but mispronunciations are something that I enjoy. I love mispronouncing Magic Cards. I don't want to mispronounce your name, but folks, let's see if we got one more news article for you folks to make your day just a little bit better. Something interesting. MTG Mutant deck offers 2 powerful commanders. Standard legal MTG board wipe sees 344% price increase, and MTG's most adorable planeswalkers are weirdly disappearing. All right, since we're talking finance, I want to just take a quick sneak peek and see what this is all about. Let's go. One more article to go here for the Friday edition. Let's take a look at this. Standard legal board wipe sees a price increase of 344%. Don't worry about it. That's right. We don't. Don't worry about it. All right. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Don't worry about it. Okay. Standard legal MTG board wipe sees a 344% increase. Is it the one we already talked about, the white one? Perhaps. Let's take a look. Financial fluctuations this week have generally come down to one or two sources: an overlooked product release and a Pro Tour shocking conclusion. Magic the Gathering players were shocked when the Rakdos Vampires deck showed up in the metagame breakdown for Pro Tour Murders of Call-Off Manor. Writing it off as officially a meme deck, players quickly realized that the Rakdos Vampires deck was the real deal and everybody at the deck of the day to the event. MTG veteran Seth Manfield eventually won the whole thing, and if you want to read more about it, check it out here. Otherwise, a lot of cards in the Ravnica Clue game were seriously undervalued, and when the product released, thanks to how severely the release was overshadowed by MagicCon, it seems like a lot of players ignored the new Clue cards until it was too late. This article is to provide some new cards seeing price spikes that to these two sources, as well as some updates in regards to how Monday's big price spikes have shaken out across the week. Path to Peril. Destroy all creatures with mana color 2 or less. Cleaving? Little cleavage here. Brody, let's show a little cleavage on the stream here. Oh, not that kind of cleavage. Path of Peril cleavage. So here's a board wipe standard is picking up steam. Steam in the stream. The Path of Peril, thanks to standard sudden adaptation of a 3-year rotation. It's a standard legal board wipe that's great for dealing with the fast decks that pump out small creatures. Due to Boros Convoke's popularity with both Standard and Pioneer, Path of Peril is commonly seen in many sideboards. This card also happens to be quite good against Amalia combo and Pioneer. Let's stop and read the card here. So it's a sorcery. It's got the same mana cost as Bontu's Last Reckoning, a card from Amonkhet block. But the Bontu card, got such a bad downside. You don't get to tap your lands. This one's a 3 mana, board wipe for 2 black and 1. Destroy all creatures with mana value 2 or less. And then you can pay a white, a black, and 4, and cast this spell for its Clay Claws. If you do, remove the words in square brackets. So you get to just wipe everything if you pay 6. For about 3 mana, you can destroy all the little guys. I think the Path to Peril is actually quite darn good. I would want to play this in my deck as a board wipe rather than the Bond 2s. I'm running Bond 2s in Commander right now, but just the fact that I don't get to untap my land seems quite bad. The standard legal Path to Peril, same price increase. Path to Peril's usage has been skyrocketing in recent days, but the Rastos Vampires deck that won the Pro Tour does use 2 of these copies in the sideboard. This has brought even more attention to the card. While the entire spike across the last 3 months is not the result of just Rakdos Vampires, the deck has definitely brought some extra attention to the demand of the card. Back in January, the Path to Peril was worth $1, and at the end of February, the card jumped to $4.44. With that said, there's both some crazy outliers with the sales of the copy of this card for almost $11. Of course, a premium version of this card is available from the silver screen treatment. This iteration of the card has much wider price range, but generally sells for around $7 to $10 in its non-foil form and $27 in its foil form. Amzu, the Swarm's Hunger. Amzu hungry? Yes, of course you're hungry. It's the morning, and we got to get a couple of meals in our belly here. Like, I mean, what are we gonna have? Ice cream for breakfast? No, perhaps a grapefruit. This may sound bananas, but I find it appealing. Whatever happened to the cantaloupe who won the lottery? It became a millionaire. The Swarm's Hunger? Making me hungry this morning for a little bit of maybe some cereal or a piece of toast with bagel. Flying Manache. Other insects you control have menace. 3/3. Whenever one or more creature cards leaves your graveyard, you may create a 1/1 a black and green insect creature. Locust God. Hello, this is what I see right away because it gives those insects tokens menace. Then put number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the greatest mana value among those cards. Do this only once each turn. Well, as mentioned today, a lot of exclusive cards from the Ravnica Clue set appeared to have been overlooked upon the product's release. A ton of different cards are now spiking in front of that set, and we come to 2 of them. That previously now we have Amzu, the Swarm's Hunger, and Amzu may have an insect tribal effect, but it may not do its best work in an insects deck. Granting all insects menace is a big deal, but Amzu is the most efficient in a deck that can trigger its triggered ability every turn, including your opponent's turn. Oh, yeah. Once each turn. Good card, loving the flexibility. Offering a similar payoff to Insidious Roots, Amzu will create a 1/1 black insect. Whether one or more cards leaves your graveyard, the big payoff is that your insects will grow in size by the biggest mana value that you spent to leave your graveyard. To limit the capabilities of Amzu, this ability can only trigger once a turn, which means you ideally want it to trigger Amzu every single turn. Ay, caramba. As long as you can consistently trigger Amzu, you should be able to grow a giant bug army. For that reason, combined with the potential scarcity, Amzu has increased the price drastically. All in all, Amzu has spiked from about $5 to $15 in a recent TCG player sales. While these cards follow the price trend of spiking Magic cards from earlier this week, the cards reported upon previously are arguably still the stars of the show. Vane Ripper's interaction with Saren, the Imperial's Bloodlord, was the one that stole the show, and these cards are spiking the hardest. So, given the chance, excuse me, pardonnez-moi, ce matin. Thanks for joining here. All of the cards from the Seth Manfield Vampire Rakdos deck are spiking, including the sideboard cards. Talk about a way to change the whole shift in the finance meta. Cards that were cheap, now expensive. What can you do? You can join me each and every morning where we discuss the prices of Magic cards to know what's going on, so you can keep the fun in your collection and you don't part with some of those extremely valuable Magic cards for too cheap a price. Also keeping an eye out there for deals each and every day when we talk about it. If you want to Join me on an adventure each and every morning where we discuss the prices of Magic cards, and we have people here who like to crack open packs and shuffle those stacks of Magic the Gathering cards. You can join me weekdays, Monday through Friday. On the morning show, it's the Brody Alfonso here. Cops are at the door. I can hear the Pinkertons pulling up. The sirens are wailing. We got to get on with our day. Wherever you are, I look forward to meeting you very soon, Dustin, Gary, all those friends of mine who enjoy the game as much as I do. Appreciate you all for tuning in. New viewers, Coach, thanks for having my back. Let's go over to Ron Burgundy for a little bit of jazz flute, bring us out on a sweet, sweet outro. It's Friday. I hope you guys have a good one. If you can't bring a friend to Magic, bring a friend to Brody's and let them enjoy the stream. You can always share this with somebody else out there who likes Magic the Gathering finance as much as we do. Have a great day, everybody.